Ever feel like you're just drowning in shoulds?
Mm-hmm.
Like everyone's telling you to be happier,
Right.
more successful,
Yeah.
and just like better.
Be better. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
today
Okay.
we're diving into a book that says
Okay.
maybe you should just chill out on giving so many fucks.
Oh, interesting.
Fucks.
Okay.
If you're digging these deep dives into these fascinating reads,
Yeah.
hit that subscribe button
Sure.
on Bookshelf so you don't miss out on future episodes.
All right.
All right, let's get to it.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Yeah.
So this book,
Okay.
The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Feck,
Yeah.
it kind of flips the whole self-help script.
Okay.
It argues that this obsession we have with happiness might actually be making us more miserable.
Okay.
What do you think about that?
That's a provocative idea, isn't it?
Yeah.
The author suggests that constantly chasing positive experiences can actually be a negative experience in itself. Oh, wow.
He uses this interesting analogy.
Okay.
Wanting positive experiences is negative,
Okay.
while accepting negative experiences can actually be positive.
Whoa.
Yeah, it's kind of mind bender.
It is.
Yeah.
It's like we're on this
Right.
endless treadmill,
Uh-huh.
striving for something
Right.
that always seems just out of reach.
Yeah, yeah.
And, you know,
Yeah.
social media doesn't help.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everyone's curating their highlight reels.
Absolutely.
Making the rest of us feel like we're not measuring up.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The author argues that this constant comparison and striving
Yeah.
is draining our energy and attention.
Right.
His main point is that we need to be way more selective about where we direct our energy.
Okay.
We need to give
Yeah.
fewer fucks.
Right. And he's not saying we should become
Right.
uncaring robots.
No, no, no. It's about figuring out
Yeah.
what truly matters to us
Exactly. Exactly.
and letting go of the rest.
Yeah.
He tells this funny story
Okay.
about his grandma,
Mm-hmm.
who was notorious
Yeah.
for saving expired coupons.
Oh, that's a great example.
Yeah.
He uses it to show how
Right.
clinging to unimportant things can actually leave us with no energy for what really counts.
Right.
Yeah, it's like spreading
So
ourselves.
it's about prioritizing.
Prioritizing, yeah.
But the author also argues
Mm-hmm.
that this ties into
Okay.
our fear
Okay.
of not being special.
Right.
We're constantly bombarded
Yeah.
with messages about achieving greatness, being extraordinary.
Yeah, yeah.
But the reality is
Right.
most of us are pretty average.
And that's perfectly fine.
Right.
The author suggests that this obsession with exceptionalism is actually holding us back.
Right.
He uses the example of Dave Mustaine,
Okay.
the musician who was kicked out of Metallica
Oh, yeah.
and went on to form Megadeth.
I remember that story.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mustaine was incredibly successful
Yeah.
with Megadeth,
Yeah.
but he still compared himself to Metallica and
Right.
felt like a failure.
Right.
He chose a metric for success
Yeah.
that pretty much guaranteed he'd always feel inadequate.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a powerful example of how
Right.
the values we choose determine the nature of our problems, and the nature of our problems determines the quality of our lives.
So we need to be really careful
Yeah.
about the values we choose
Yeah.
and how we measure ourselves.
Exactly.
If we're chasing something meaningless,
Right.
we're setting ourselves up
Yeah.
for disappointment.
Right.
But the author doesn't shy away from the tough stuff either. He actually talks about
Yeah.
how suffering can be valuable,
Okay.
both
Yeah.
physically and emotionally.
Yes. He introduces this idea
Okay.
of the disappointment panda
Okay.
who comes along and tells us the hard truths.
Okay.
Like the fact that problems never really go away.
Right.
They just evolve
Right.
or get replaced by new ones.
Yeah, that feeling of disappointment can be like a grumpy panda
Right. Right.
telling you to pay attention.
Yeah. Pay attention.
It might be annoying,
Yeah.
but it's pointing out something important
Right.
you need to address.
That's a great way to put it.
Yeah.
The idea is that pain,
Yeah.
whether physical or emotional,
Yeah.
acts as a feedback mechanism,
Okay.
helping us
Yeah.
learn and grow.
Okay.
It's like when you stub your toe,
Oh, yeah.
it hurts like crazy,
Yeah.
but it
Okay.
teaches you to be more careful next time.
It uses the
Yeah,
fascinating example of Hiru Onoda,
Okay.
the Japanese soldier who hid in the jungle
Right.
for decades after World War II ended
Okay.
because he refused to believe the war was over.
Onoda's story highlights how
Yeah.
our beliefs can become so deeply ingrained
Right.
that we cling to them even when they're contradicted by reality.
Wow.
It shows the danger of
Right.
being too attached to our own narratives
Yeah.
and the importance of questioning our assumptions.
So we need to be open
Yeah.
to the possibility that
Yeah.
we might be wrong.
Be wrong. Right.
But this leads to another key point.
Okay.
We are always choosing.
Choosing.
Even when things feel completely out of our control,
Yeah.
we still have the power
That's right.
to choose how we interpret
Yeah.
and react to those events.
He distinguishes between fault and responsibility.
Right.
We may not be at fault
Okay.
for everything that happens to us.
But we are responsible
Okay.
for our responses.
Right. He tells this heartbreaking story about a man whose son was murdered.
Okay.
This man could have easily succumbed
Yeah.
to anger and bitterness. That would be
Yeah.
understandable, wouldn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
But he chose to channel his pain into something positive.
Okay.
Creating a foundation to help other families cope with similar tragedies. It's incredibly inspiring.
It is.
Yeah.
It shows that even in the face of unimaginable suffering, we still have the power to choose our response and create meaning from our pain.
Exactly.
But he also talks about something called the responsibility fallacy, right?
Right. It's the idea that people often hesitate to take responsibility for their problems.
Right.
Because they believe it means
they are also at fault.
It's like when your internet is down.
Yeah.
It's not your fault.
Right.
The service is out.
Right.
But you're responsible.
You're responsible
for finding a way to work around it.
Exactly. Yeah. It's about recognizing that you always have a choice, even if those choices are difficult or uncomfortable.
And this all connects to the idea of being wrong about everything.
Right.
The author suggests we should be more skeptical of our own thoughts and beliefs and constantly question our assumptions.
Right, because our beliefs are often based on incomplete information, inaccurate memories, and unconscious biases. We're constantly filtering reality through our own subjective lens.
He uses the example of the repressed memory phenomenon of the 1980s.
Okay.
Where people were recalling instances of abuse that turned out to be false memories, often planted by well-intentioned, but misguided therapists.
That's a scary thought.
That is a scary thought.
Yeah.
It really shows how important critical thinking is and how easily we can be misled.
Yeah.
Even by ourselves.
By ourselves, yeah.
So with all that in mind, what does this mean for us?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
What's the takeaway?
Well, the author argues that instead of waiting for motivation to strike, we need to take action.
Okay.
And let the resulting inspiration and motivation propel us forward. He calls this the do something principle.
I like that old Likey slogan. Just do it.
Just do it. Yep.
Instead of waiting for the perfect moment or the perfect feeling, just take that first step, no matter how small.
But what if you start doing things and you hit a wall, you question your purpose? That's where the idea of the Immortality Project comes in, right?
That's a great segue.
Right.
The Immortality Project is it's a fascinating concept.
Okay.
It comes from the work of Ernest Becker, who argued that our fear of death drives us to create projects and values that give us a sense of lasting significance.
So it's like we're trying to leave our mark on the world, something that will outlive us.
Becker believed that we try to create a legacy for ourselves, whether it's through our children, our work, or our contributions to society. But here's the twist. The author points out that these immortality projects can often become the source of our problems.
Because we become so fixated on achieving them that we lose sight of what truly matters in the present moment. Precisely. We get so caught up in the pursuit of some future ideal that we forget to appreciate the beauty and joy of the here and now.
He tells a story about his friend Josh, who tragically died in a diving accident.
Oh, wow.
The author was devastated by Josh's death, but it also forced him to confront his own mortality and reevaluate his priorities.
It's a powerful reminder that life is precious and unpredictable, and we shouldn't waste it on things that ultimately don't matter. We should focus on living a meaningful life now, rather than postponing it for some future goal that may never be realized.
So acknowledging our mortality can actually be a good thing.
The author argues that it can be incredibly liberating. It can help us prioritize what truly matters in life. And free us from the pursuit of superficial values.
He says that death is the only thing we can know with any certainty. And therefore it should be the compass by which we orient all of our other values.
It's a profound perspective shift that can help us appreciate the present moment. And let go of our attachments to things that ultimately don't matter.
He even describes this incredibly vivid experience of sitting on the edge of a cliff in South Africa, staring down at the crashing waves below.
Wow.
He talks about how confronting that feeling of his own mortality was both terrifying and exhilarating.
It's like that experience stripped away all the superficial layers of his ego and allowed him to see the world with fresh eyes.
And it ultimately led him to embrace this idea of not giving a fuck about the things that don't truly matter. So he could focus his energy on the things that do.
It's about recognizing that we all have a limited amount of time and energy. And we need to be intentional about how we spend them.
You know, one thing that really struck me about the book is the author's emphasis on the importance of our values. He argues that most of us are terrible at identifying our true values.
That's right.
The ones that actually drive our behaviors and decisions.
He talks about how we might say we value things like honesty and kindness, but then we turn around and gossip about our friends or cheat on our taxes. Our actions don't always align with our stated values.
So how do we get better at figuring out what we really give a fuck about.
The author suggests a technique he calls the self-awareness onion. Yep. It's this idea of peeling back the layers of our thoughts and emotions to get to the core of what's driving them.
Okay. I'm intrigued.
Yeah.
How does this onion technique work?
Well, he says the first layer is our surface emotions. Okay. Things like anger, sadness, anxiety. Okay. But we shouldn't just stop there.
Right. We need to ask ourselves why we're feeling these emotions.
So dig a little deeper.
Yeah.
Go beyond the initial reaction.
Exactly. The second layer is about understanding the thoughts and beliefs that are triggering those emotions.
Okay.
So if you're feeling anxious about a presentation at work, you might ask yourself, why am I feeling anxious?
Okay.
Is it because I'm afraid of public speaking?
Right.
Or is it because I don't feel prepared?
So you're identifying the root cause of the anxiety.
Right. And then the third layer, which he says is the most important, is about examining our values.
Okay.
So in that same example, you might ask, why does it matter to me if I do well on this presentation? Is it because I value recognition from my boss? Right. Or is it because I value doing a good job and contributing to the team?
I see. So by asking those why questions, you're uncovering the deeper values that are shaping your experience. Right. But he also points out
that sometimes our values can actually be causing us more problems. Right?
Absolutely. He gives the example of someone who values being liked by everyone. Okay. That person might constantly seek approval and validation from others. Right. Which can lead to people-pleasing behaviors and a fear of rejection.
They're giving too many fucks about what other people think. Yeah. And it ends up making them miserable.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So how do we choose better values? Right. Ones that will actually lead to a happier, more fulfilling life. Right. The author suggests focusing on values that are internally driven and under our control, like honesty, creativity, or self-respect. These are values we can cultivate and practice, regardless of external circumstances.
As opposed to values that are externally driven, like wealth, fame, or constantly seeking pleasure.
Right, because those things are often outside of our control and can lead to a lot of anxiety and disappointment.
So it's about focusing on what we can control, and letting go of the things we can't.
Exactly.
But how do we overcome the fear that often prevents us from living in alignment with our values?
He offers some very practical advice. Do something.
Okay.
He argues that action is the key to unlocking motivation and inspiration. It's like that old Nike slogan, just do it. Right. Instead of waiting for the perfect moment or the perfect feeling. Right. Just take that first step. Right. No matter how small.
But isn't there some truth to the idea that we need to be inspired or motivated before we can take action?
The author challenges that assumption. Okay. He talks about how he used this do something principle to build his own business. Okay. He was full of self-doubt and anxiety. Right. And he just started writing. And eventually the act of writing created its own momentum.
He's saying that action often precedes motivation. Right. We don't need to have all the answers. Right. Or feel completely confident before we begin.
That's right.
The act of doing something, even if it's messy or imperfect, will help us clarify our values and create the motivation to keep going.
Exactly.
It's a bit counterintuitive, isn't it?
It is. But it makes sense when you think about it. Right. We often get stuck in this cycle of analysis paralysis, overthinking everything and waiting for the perfect conditions to arise. Right. But the reality is the perfect conditions rarely exist. Yeah. We have to create our own momentum through action.
He also emphasizes that this applies to any area of life, whether it's starting a new hobby, asking someone out on a date, or having a difficult conversation. Yeah. The key is to
just
take action.
Take action.
And let the experience guide you. Right. But what about the things we should say no to?
Okay.
How do we decide what's worth our time and energy?
Yeah. That's a great question. The author talks about his time living in Russia, where people are much more direct and honest about their likes and dislikes. Okay. He contrasts this with Western culture, where we're often more concerned with being polite and avoiding conflict. Yeah. Even if it means sacrificing our own needs and desires.
So we end up saying yes to things we don't really care about.
Yeah, to please people, just to avoid rocking the boat.
Exactly. The author suggests that every time we say yes to something, we're also saying no to something else.
That's right.
It's a matter of recognizing that our time and energy are finite resources. So we need to be mindful of where we're directing those resources. Right. And make sure they're aligned with what truly matters to us.
He makes this interesting point about how romantic love is often portrayed as this ultimate goal in life. But it can actually be a trap. Okay. Right? He draws this comparison to cocaine, saying that romantic love stimulates the same parts of the brain and can be just as addictive.
He's not saying that all romantic love is bad.
No, of course not.
Of course. Yeah. But he cautions against the kind of obsessive,
the unhealthy kind,
all-consuming love, that's often glorified in movies and books.
He argues that healthy love is about choosing to share our lives with someone, flaws and all, rather than trying to escape our own problems or find someone to complete us.
And he talks about how people with a sense of entitlement often sabotage their relationships.
That's right.
By either blaming others for their problems or taking on too much responsibility for other people's problems.
It's about recognizing that we're each responsible for our own emotions and actions. And we can't expect our partners to fix us or make us happy.
And setting healthy boundaries is key, right?
Absolutely.
He also says that conflict can actually be a good thing.
A good thing,
because it helps build trust.
Absolutely. It's about being willing to be honest and vulnerable with each other.
Yeah.
And to address issues directly rather than sweeping them under the rug.
Right. Honesty and vulnerability can be scary.
Yeah.
Which is why the author encourages us to embrace being wrong.
That's an interesting point.
Yeah.
Most of us try to avoid being wrong at all costs.
At all costs, yeah.
But the author argues that being wrong is actually how we learn and grow.
Right.
If we're never wrong, it means we're not pushing ourselves beyond our comfort zones.
This book really makes you think about the stories we tell ourselves and how they shape our realities.
Yeah. He uses the example of a guy who was really insecure about his height and believed that women would never find him attractive because he was short. And of course, this belief became a self-fulfilling prophecy because it prevented him from even trying to connect with women.
It's a classic example of how our beliefs can create the reality we experience.
He challenges us to ask ourselves, what if I'm wrong about everything? What if the limitations we perceive are just constructs of our own minds?
It's a powerful question.
It is.
What if we're capable of so much more than we realize?
Yeah.
But we're holding ourselves back with our limiting beliefs.
Exactly. It's about opening ourselves up to the possibility that there might be a whole other way of seeing the world that we haven't even considered.
And this all ties back to his point about the paradox of choice.
Right, the paradox of choice. Yeah.
He argues that our cultural obsession with more is often making us less happy.
Yeah. Less happy.
He brings up the idea that having too many options can actually lead to anxiety, indecision.
Yeah.
And a feeling of dissatisfaction.
He uses the example of travel, saying that at first he was all about seeing as many places as possible, but eventually he realized that he was just skimming the surface and not really connecting with any place or culture deeply.
But it's not about checking things off a list, but about having meaningful experiences.
Exactly. He argues that depth of experience is more rewarding than breadth of experience.
Instead of trying to do everything and have everything, he suggests we should focus on a few things that truly matter to us and commit to them fully. It's about recognizing that true fulfillment comes from investing in something deeply, whether it's a relationship, a career, a creative pursuit, or a personal value.
Exactly. So ultimately, the subtle art of not giving a feck is about accepting our limitations, embracing our flaws, and focusing on the things that truly matter to us. It's about choosing our struggles wisely and recognizing that the struggles themselves are what give our lives meaning and purpose.
It's a reminder that we all have the power to choose our values, to create our own meaning.
That's right.
And to live a life that's true to ourselves.
And that's a message worth giving a fuck about.
It definitely is. If you're feeling lost, overwhelmed, or just plain stuck, highly recommend checking out this book.
Yeah, give it a read.
You might just change your perspective on what it means to live a good life.